that's nice. Us existing is nice.
True, I'm a fan.
Yeah.
I just said that WP is into diversity, and I think it's important that it's taking it a step further than just like, I don't know, kind of scary.
Bridge Builders is a group at Warner. We talk about the intersection of faith and sexuality. As co-president of Bridge Builders for next year, I'm going to be giving a safe space training to all the student leadership. It's not technically an LGBTQ group because it can't be. Warner is affiliated with not an affirming denomination. We can't march in the Pride Parade in Warner gear, but everyone deserves to feel safe and loved. And that is something that they can't argue with, but they can argue with sexuality is God-given. There was a meeting recently about it, and they were not very kind. It hurts. I'm a religion major. I spend my life thinking about what does God think about this, and what should I do in response to that.
Why don't you leave?
Because Warner is good. And because there are good people in an organization that is directly harming my personhood. There are people there that love me and say, Sarah, your sexuality is one of the beautiful pieces that the Creator made you to be. And there are people there who are fighting for me. This is just one of the struggles that they're still fighting. I want to help with that fight. And so I stay and I fight. There is ground to be won, and I want to win it. And I want people to come after me, and I want them to have a safe space. And I feel strong enough that I can help make it a safe space. Probably the biggest struggle for me coming out as queer is that there are so many good people in my life that are really hurtful and they're really homophobic, but they are still good and they are still loving and they are still godly, even if they have a ways to go.
Tell me a bit about how you could see such nuance in that situation.
Well, first of all, because I saw it in myself. Within my coming out process, I had to face a lot of internalized homophobia. I had to recognize that, and I had to face that head on and realize that, this doesn't make you a bad person. And this is across the board when it comes to issues of oppression. There are bad people out there, but that doesn't mean that all who do bad things are bad people. Just because you, don't want my girlfriend to come to an event because it makes you uncomfortable, you, I'm gone, I'm never gonna talk to you again. That's not gonna help people learn and to grow. What's gonna help them is for me to sit down beside them and for me to say, hey, what you're doing is really hurtful, but I love you despite that. I will continue to love you and I will continue to teach you and not let those things slide, but also not let those things ruin my relationships with people. For a really long time, my sexuality and my faith were at war. I was in a world where faith was praised and sexuality, especially queerness, was demonized. So, of course, that's what I pushed away. And then there came a point where I couldn't ignore it anymore. And I believe in a God that is forgiving and that has created every person as they're meant to be. So how do I believe in a God that is love, but I look at this thing that feels like love and say it's wrong? God creates love and God creates people, but these people that are in love, there's something wrong with them. Faith and sexuality can be at war and are at war for many people, but for me, that war felt wrong. These things were not supposed to be at war, they were both mine. God had stitched me together in my mother's womb and knew me before I was born. God knew that I was me, and God knew that I was queer.
What do you say to those who say that your sexuality is a sin?
I think that we put a lot of weight on the Bible, but I think God is bigger than a set of books. The Bible says a lot of stuff is a sin. Don't mix fabrics. I think that is not always applicable, because this shirt looks great and it is multiple fabrics. The Bible is the story of redemption of a people. The fact that people can be really bad and people can mess up and people can do the wrong thing. And there is a being out there who can look at all of our wrongness and our badness and say, no, you are good and I love you anyways. And I think that is something that is applicable always. I think that the biblical argument of judgment is really important though as well. There's no point in judging others because we are all worthy of judgment. God, in the end, is the judge and the jury and the sentencer. And God will decide whether or not my sexuality is a sin, and that's not for other people to do. And the God that I know would say, did you love other people? Did you treat them well? Did you fight for those who are oppressed and who are poor? Cool. I don't care who you make out with. The Bible is a beautiful book full of stories that are meant to be used for good. And when they're not, then something's wrong. The gospel is meant to be good news. Telling me that my sexuality is a sin feels like the worst news. My sexuality has been what has allowed me to be able to look into the mirror and like what I see, to find a love that is patient and kind and does not boast and does not envy. I grew up in a really nice little town outside of Portland, in a middle-class conservative family. I have a younger sister, wonderful parents who have been married for almost 25 years and truly showed me like what love meant. I didn't know that homosexuality existed until I was 13, and it was an episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer when Willow meets Tara and they kiss for the first time. I just happened to be in my mom's room while she was folding laundry and this episode was on, and suddenly these women are kissing and I am very confused. I was like, oh, this like feels weird. Maybe I should just ignore it. Finally my mom said, you know, Sarah, sometimes people do the wrong thing, but we love them anyways. We hate the sin, but we love the sinner. And that was the first time I knew about homosexuality. I am someone who I don't feel too many sexual feelings. Like that really played into me like denying my sexuality for a while because it wasn't something I often felt. And when I would get close enough to girls that I would feel those things, I would just be like, oh no, we're just really good friends. Of course I want to like hug them and touch them all the time. I'm just like a physical touch person. And I was able to do that for a really long time. Longer than I should have, because my parents asked if I was gay when I was 14. I remember coming home from school one day and my mom looked at me and she goes, Sarah, are you a lesbian? And I was like, no, Mom, like, what do you mean, what? And she's like, well, you've never like talked about a crush or had a boyfriend, like, what's going on? I was like, I don't know. And then she asked me again when I was 15, and I said, no, again. That was literally the only time we talked about sexualities was when my mom was asking me if I was a lesbian. I grew up in an incredibly heteronormative household where it was just assumed you'd marry a man and you'd have kids. To this day, I don't even fully know what my parents think about LGBTQ issues because they won't talk about it. It's insane. When I was probably 17, I think was the first time I started questioning myself. I did theater growing up. What a surprise. And in theater, there are no real physical boundaries. Those lines are kind of blurred because you have to be physical with people that you're not in a relationship with. And one of my first kisses was on stage. We decided it would be fun if we all kissed each other. And the first time I kissed a woman, it truly stopped me in my tracks, but then I ignored it. Like, this isn't a thing. Like, I'm gonna marry a man and that's it. I even like had a boyfriend at the time. I never allowed it. I got to college and my roommate was openly bi. I remember saying something that I cringe at now. You know what? I'm like sexually attracted to women, but I could never fall in love with a woman, so I'm straight. And so that was kind of my view for a while. And then my sophomore year of college, we were talking about Paul and Romans. My professor, He looked very conservative. He was an older white man. He wore a suit every day. He gets this really damning passage for a lot of LGBTQ people. And he said, okay, let's talk about this passage because you're gonna have to talk about it one day. This passage talks about a time in which there was a lot of pedophilic things going on. Masters taking their young slave boys into their quarters when they were married and doing it in pagan rituals. And that is what God is saying is not okay, and what Paul is saying is not okay. And that was the moment that changed everything for me and allowed me to think, oh, maybe I could be, and maybe that's okay. I spent the next year kind of being like, I'm not gonna say either way, because I don't know. And then Beth was in my human sexuality class. I didn't know it, but that was the same year that she came out to the whole campus. And she has a really interesting story. She came out in high school and then went back in the closet when she went to Warner because she wasn't sure. And that was the year that she finally said, screw it, I'm coming out to everyone. I got invited over for a game night and was kind of like, oh, I really like these people, and Beth is really nice. I think I should hang out with her more. And I started to really enjoy our talks more than I had enjoyed talking to someone in years. One day I went over to watch RuPaul's Drag Race. And so we were sitting with her roommate. There were 2 couches. I sat on one end, literally at the arm, and she sat right next to me. And I don't remember the episode because the whole time I was just thinking, something feels weird. This is a feeling I know. I have a crush on this girl. And so I spent the next 2 weeks in homophobia hell within myself. And I used to pray every night, be like, God, show me what to do. And I would make these silly deals with myself and with God. We went to see Wonder Woman together with a group of friends. And I remember praying beforehand, okay, God, if we're meant to be, she'll sit next to me during the movie. And then she'd sit next to me during the movie, and I'd go, maybe this is meant to be. And then we'd separate, and I'd go, oh my God, what did that mean? And I'd lose it. I did that for a month or 2, fully not accepting it, but knowing, in my soul that it was true. I learned later, she liked me for 6 months. I was Beth's first kiss. We were really probably gonna end up dating, and I had this notion in my gut of, I can't be in the closet. That's not fair to me. That's not fair to Beth, who will be entering her first relationship. And that's not fair to anyone in my family for me to be lying to them. So on Father's Day, I sat my parents down one by one, and I came out, and my mom cried a little bit. And she told me, I'm scared for you. I don't want you to do this because there are going to be people out there who are going to be really horrible to you. And my dad, he smiled and he said, you've got good taste. She's a cute one. And then he said, you know what? As long as you are happy and you are in love and you are healthy, that's the best gift you could give me. He has not always been great since then, but that was a moment that was so good. And in those moments where my dad is not great, I think back to those moments. I think that his first reaction was who he is, and he believes that I am good and I am okay. But then the times where he tells me, why are you upset that someone is being rude to you? This is a choice you're making. As my sexuality is a choice, and me falling in love with a woman is a choice. And that I just kind of have to suck it up.
Do you identify as bisexual?
I did in the beginning, and I do to my parents because that's a word that they can understand.
Right.
When I'm in situations that I feel like people won't understand how I identify, I use bi. I identify more with just kind of queer, just not straight. Mm-hmm. I could fall in love with a man, and I have been in love with a man. I was in love with my high school boyfriend. but for the rest of my life, I'm gonna love this amazing, beautiful woman, and that's not a choice. I tried very hard to choose otherwise. They say all the time, you can't choose who you fall in love with. When they're talking about straight people, why can gay people choose? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. People have a lot of confirmation bias when it comes to gay relationships. The second it doesn't work out, then of course it's not real. A lot of conservative people don't believe that homosexuality is real, and so I definitely feel a lot of pressure. The two of us have to be perfect. We can't have issues. Beth and I actually broke up once, and when we got back together, my mom was like, well, why are you getting back together with her? Is it real? Do you actually like care for her? And my parents are a couple that broke up. My mom hated my dad for a year, and then they got back together and were married in 8 months. But because we are two women, the fact that we broke up means that it can't be real. You have to be this perfect couple, because any crack means that the whole thing is broken. But then at the same time, our relationship is not seen as serious as other people. My younger sister is in a relationship right now. She's 18, he's 17, they've been together 2 months. My mom's already talking about marriage. Like, oh, at their wedding, we're gonna tell this story. She has never even asked if that was something on my mind with Beth. But we have a future, and we believe in a future with the two of us. It is not loving to refer to my partner as my friend, or to not refer to my partner at all. I think straight people think it's loving to not make a big deal out of it. But ignoring it also doesn't help. It doesn't feel like love when someone says they still love you. When you come out, this is who I have always been. And for you to say you still love me, it means that this is something acceptable to not love me for. When I go to my parents and I say, well, my friend told me that she's not okay with my sexuality, and they say, well, can you blame her? Like, she grew up this way. You can't be mad at her for that. Like, why are you so hurt? I know it's from a place where they don't want me to lose a relationship, but that feels like it's accepting of homophobia. When people open space for me and are explicit about the fact that I'm safe, that feels like love. When people don't ask me if I have a boyfriend, if they ask if I have a partner, that feels like love, because it gives my love validity. It feels like love when people don't stare when I hold my girlfriend's hand. It feels like love when people call out homophobia, when I don't have to be the one who does it. It feels like love when people do their homework, look up online what it means to be queer and what it means to be LGBTQ, and when people recognize that I don't have the same rights, that the world is not set up for me, and that I have to fight for things and I have to fight to belong. It feels like love when people recognize that there's still a long way to go. I'm the only LGBTQ person in the religion department right now. There have been before, there had to have been. LGBTQ people have been around for forever. I can't be naive enough to think that I am the first and the only. Where I work, a lot of my coworkers are LGBTQ, and a lot of them left religious institutions, both schools and the church itself, because of harm to LGBTQ people. I don't think that's necessary. I don't think it has to be an either or thing, because I think Jesus was a both and person. And I think Jesus would look at me and would look at the LGBTQ community and say, it's not God or your sexuality, it's both and. And that's the way that I live my life. And I think that there are a lot of LGBTQ people out there, one, who believe that. There are a lot of us in the church. I work with affirming churches. There are a lot of people that in their heart believe that the divine being says that they are right, but they've been told so many times by people who are supposedly speaking for God that they aren't, that they have stopped listening. I had a coworker come to me the other day and ask about affirming churches because he grew up Christian but left Christianity because of all of the homophobia. And when I talked about the fact that I am religious and the fact that I am going to work probably in ministry one day and that I'm openly queer, he saw that it was possible to be both and to work through it. And he came to me and said, help me find a church because I want to go back. And I think that's where the future of the church is. Right now, I'm working with the United Methodist Church, with a church that does an outreach to high school for students who can't function in normal high schools. A lot of kids have left high school because they were bullied for being LGBTQ. And I'm gonna be working in this high school with these students as an openly queer Christian woman, saying, hey, you don't have to believe what I believe, but here's a possibility. It's because of my faith that I'm reaching out to you and telling you that you are beautiful and that you are loved and that you are not alone in this world. I think my future is showing people possibilities. I have suffered really heavily with depression and anxiety growing up. I was really suicidal for a while. The church is what told me when I was being bullied that I am beautiful and that I am loved at a really crucial time where I needed to be saved. And then being queer has shown me that I am worthy of love from another human. So these are two communities that have truly saved my life on multiple occasions. And I have so much love for them, even though they both mess up a lot. The church messes up a lot. LGBTQ people mess up a lot. Because these are both just made up of humans. Humans that are deeply flawed and hurt, but at their core are good and beautiful. I think we just get messed up along the way. But I don't think it's impossible to turn back.